Fidel Castro, after the revolution came to power in Cuba in 1959, the country's had its share of challenges, but none quite like what we're seeing right now, where people believe that the country is really on the verge of collapse. Now, my special guest today has spent a lot of time in Cuba and just came out really last week, and I'm happy to have him here so he can tell his story about things in Cuba. Vivian Wiley, my good friend, welcome to Read Between the Lines.
Hello, Julian. It's good to be here. Hello, Bahamas.
Now, you're a frequent flyer to Cuba. You've been to Cuba many times, as many Bahamians do. But this time, I think, is the first time that we sensed real concern from you. Tell us about some of your previous history going to Cuba and what was so different this time.
Well, in 2015, I had a mild stroke, and someone suggested, me being a person who's been to Cuba, that I get a second opinion. I went to Cuba, and that is where I met some of the best doctors that I have ever met. They, from 2015 for 10 years, going on 11, they've been my doctors, and they provided me, Julian, with comfort, knowledge, and understanding of my cardiac and my cranial positions. Cuba, I've been going to Cuba from 1990. There were some hiatuses where I moved to the States, and so it wasn't wise to go to Cuba while you were living in the States at that time. But I don't know if you remember, Juliet, when we were in Form 1, there was a teacher.
Actually, I didn't come to St. John's until Form 2, so I wouldn't remember.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You may or may not have been in this class, but I remember Cedric Moss.
Okay, but if he was there, I was there.
Okay. There was an essay that we had to do, that if we could be anybody in the world, who would we be? A lot of the guys said the President of the United States. Some of them said Jesus Christ. Some of the girls said the Queen of England. Some said Elizabeth Taylor. But I said, if I could be one person in the world, I would like to be Fidel Castro. And Cedric and I have this joke. It's a lifelong friendship and a lifelong joke that I picked up probably the hardest person in the world to emulate.
Yeah, but I don't think that's surprising if people know you.
Exactly. So my interest in Cuba was lifelong, and when I went to Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, Michigan, I was studying in an international relations class. We had an essay on who is responsible for the Soviets being in the Western world, in Cuba. And Vivian Wiley took the side that the United States of America was responsible for Russia being ill. And I didn't realize that a lot of the members of my class were serving in the U.S. Army, when they used to come to the class in
Ordinary clothes. So.
Boy, I got an A in the class, but that's the first time I ever felt threatened for my views on Cuba. Fast forward to last year, November, I had cardio, and I had some health issues, and I had to go to Cuba. When I first got there, things were slower than they were in the previous years and times.
And that was evident from
November the 14th. So I went to the stores. The prices were higher. The people seemed to be more desperate. The number of beggars, people asking for alms, increased. And just by the shoes you wear or the clothes you wear, even before you speak, Cubans are very perceptive. They know that you're a tourist.
And
They're not going to go to the other Cuban. They're going to come to you and say, can I have money for food?
And in my experience, they definitely know when you're a Bahamian because it happened to be Bahamian.
Yeah. And so, Julian, I got treatment at the hospital. I actually had to be in intensive care for 4 days. But what happens in Cuba is that, unlike in other countries, you go to see one doctor and he says, this is what I think your problem is. This is my prescription. This is my mode of treatment for rehabilitation. That's well and good for countries that have doctors that are that smart. But Cuba, if you have an ailment, there must be a minimum of 2 doctors. One is a senior, one is a junior. In my case, I had a cardiac problem and I had an aneurysm. So I had 4 doctors for my heart and 4 neurologists. I have pictures of them.
I've seen some of them on.
Yeah. And these doctors get paid about the equivalent of $40 a month.
Wow.
But they give you $4,000 worth of service just based on prices in the Bahamas. I don't speak 100% Spanish, but my doctor doesn't speak 100% English. So we used to get along because he knew a lot of stuff in English and I knew some stuff in Spanish.
You never use an interpreter for?
Me? I'm my interpreter.
Okay. No, I just, just to make sure that there's no miscommunication.
You, I just happen to know that you speak at least more than 3 or 4 or 5 languages. Let's vivid. My doctor, Dr. Alfredo Trivelet, Dr. Wilfredo, Dr. Leonardo Garcia, and Dr. Maricela, and I can list at least 8 of them that look at me, and they have conferences and consultations in the morning on each patient. And for me, the medical service in Cuba has saved my life. I don't want to badmouth PMH because I won't. I'm a Bahamian. I don't want to badmouth the high prices at Doctors Hospital because the doctors there are good. But what I have found in Cuba is that I have more people who care about getting you well and keeping you alive than whether you have insurance or whatever they might be looking for. And Julian,
so you really see the Hippocratic Oath in its essence.
In its essence, Julian, I'm going to break code and tell you that I had a blockage. And my ejection fraction was down to 18%. I was in a wheelchair when I got to Cuba. They took me by ambulance to the Sierra Garcia. My friend, who is one of the team of doctors that put together the 5 COVID vaccines for Cuba, is also a teacher at the university, and he is the head of the intensive care unit at Sierra Garcia. And I was shooting for the first time. I realized that really real. I was dead. I was alone. But my friend, the doctor, told me, he said, he put his hand on me, he said, don't worry. And with that, I was given a medication that was made in Cuba for Cubans. And by law, he was not allowed to give me this medication.
Wow.
This medication was an anticoagulant that was produced for the cosmonauts who go in space, that when they come down to Earth, the atmosphere is so thick, their blood clots. Mm-hmm. And he gave me a 5-day treatment of that. And Julian, I am here today. That's all I can say. He got into a little bit of trouble with the administration of the hospital for 2 reasons. In Cuba, once you come to the hospital, before you get any type of medical service, they tell you the bill is going to be this. We need you to pay your bill, and if anything extra, you can pay it. If it's anything less, we'll give it back to you.
Okay.
I didn't pay the bills. I went in from Bahamas Air to Sierra to the ICU. This was a Friday, the 14th of November. I came out of ICU on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the director of the hospital had a meeting with me, the doctor, a translator, and the medical team. And my doctor was asked, 1, why did you serve him? And he didn't. There's a bill here for him, $2,000 and something for 4 days in the ICU with doctors, this, that, and that.
Which is still exceptionally amazing.
It's cheap.
Yeah.
Then he was asked, why did he administer the medication that was not supposed to be for non-Cubans to me? And he told the director, because he is my friend, not only my patient. And that right there, that brought tears to my eyes, because I realized they had him on trial for giving me preferential treatment, for breaking the rules. But because of him doing that, I'm here today. Julian, we can think of many people and many instances where a doctor needs to make a life and death decision. And with God's help, this doctor took his oath to heart and said, I can't let this man die. I know what he needs. We have what he needs.
Well, that's exceptional. But the thing is, it also brings to the fore how important the Cuban medical program and other Cuban programs and associations or partnerships we have with Cuba, not just here in the Bahamas, but the entire region, Barbados, all of the countries, really, St. Vincent, St. Lucia. And just today, actually, I saw where the main opposition in Jamaica, the People's National Party, urged Caribbean countries yesterday to provide a principled and compassionate response to the ongoing situation in Cuba as the country counters the latest actions of the United States that are fueling a humanitarian crisis in that Caribbean country. It says the PNP added that external pressures intensify and continue to adversely affect the daily lives and well-being for the Cuban people. It's both appropriate and necessary for the region to respond with understanding and solidarity. I'll ask you if you think, based on that the region is responding as efficiently as it should at this time?
If I were to give you a one-word answer, it would be no. But there are extenuating circumstances that I don't think the world realizes. Julie and I was there in Cuba on January the 3rd when Maduro was kidnapped and taken to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, then flown to New York. What the world doesn't realize, Julian, is on that day, 32 Cuban soldiers were killed who were guarding Maduro at this presidential palace.
Right.
And over 100 were injured. I was also in Cuba when these bodies flew in. They declared a time of an emergency for Cuba because this number of casualties was very high. The United States, CNN, and all the American media played it like, oh, they just went in there and they scooped up Maduro. No, they had a firefight.
And if you look at some of the footage in Caracas, you can see that it wasn't just us. Yeah.
Right.
It was an attack. And actually, it was later described how they went in stealth form. And yeah. So
no, they put it up.
Yeah.
They went in there killing everybody who was in there. They killed all the inner guard because these men were highly trained by the Soviets and the Cubans. So they just got they got smashed. They beat them bad in the butt. What that did was that put Cuba on alert. A military alert. Because now they have to have 32 funerals. And they had them. They had one for everybody, and then each individual from where they were from were buried. Some were buried in the National Cemetery.
But a serious cast of gloom for the whole people of Cuba.
Now, from December, the United States was threatening Maduro, make a deal with us, or we come in. Make a deal with us.
Yeah, they were saying that, yeah.
But they had already started blocking the shipments of fuel to Cuba.
And then the naval sort of system would arrive.
When they went off the coast of Trinidad,
right.
That was in December. And so what I'm saying to you, Julian, is the Cubans knew
what was happening,
was going on. So they did not expect it to deteriorate so rapidly, but it deteriorated rapidly because Trump started seizing the boats. That might have taken a chance to give Cuba. He totally cut them off. Julian, I don't know if you know, but in Cuba, the garbage disposal system is very important because the people throw the garbage by 4 garbage bins on the corner. And 10,000 people live in the neighborhood.
Wow, so they can't afford to pile up.
The garbage trucks don't have no fuel. The tractor don't have no fuel. So I've seen where whole roads from side to side have been full with garbage, just like you walking on the Harrow Road dump site in the middle of Havana, in central Havana. And
so obviously these things have killed tourism. I mean, but of course, a lot of flights.
It's one thing.
Yeah. But it's the daily life of people.
It is the scent and the diseases Because don't forget, Cuba is a tropical country.
True.
So the germs and the bacteria grow and multiply daily. And if you don't pick it up for 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks worth of germs, and if you inhale that,
Boy, I could only imagine.
that's why when I was discharged from the hospital, I moved a half a block away from the hospital. Because the garbage, more than the petroleum now, is killing the people. The things that are happening that the world needs to know about is when any country, but in this case Cuba, does not get its petroleum, the generators to the hospital
Shut down.
stop.
Yeah.
You have babies in incubators. I ain't talking about old people yet. You have premature babies
And everything is sealed by the generator. Whoa.
that are dying. You have operations, cancer, life-saving operations. The MRI and the X-ray machine can't be put online because they demand too much power, and the generator can't power them up. So medical services stocks. And what people need to understand that this isn't just a problem with fuel. People are dying. Old people can't live in a hot house. No light. Julian, the light used to cut off 5 a.m. in the morning, come back on 10 o'clock in the night. The way I went around that is thanks to the people at Park Central Hotel in Central Park in Havana. They used to allow me to go there, and I used to pay 2,500 pesos for 24 hours to use their Wi-Fi. And for me, the Wi-Fi was secondary. Their lights never went off because they were tourism-based operation. They always seem to have fuel for the generator. So what happened with me was I was able to then live in comfort between 10 o'clock to about 8 o'clock. I would be there every day, and I got to know the people, and that's how I survived. I survived because I'm from a country where tourism is number one, and Atlanta ain't gonna let the power cut off. Bahama ain't gonna let the power cut off. They got their own generators, and so I was able to do that. Now, getting back to your question, somebody has to stand up to the bully. The United States is using gunboat diplomacy to enforce its intentions on Cuba.
Okay. Now, before we get into this, we're at the halfway point in the show. So I want you to hold that thought. And when we come back, we're speaking with Vivian Wiley, who's just recently come back from Cuba and is sharing his experiences about life there during this hardest time for the Cuban people. Stay with us.